I love commerce. I've done a library event here with the teens, and it was fantastic. And so when I got invited to come hang out with teenagers all day and talk about books, heck yeah. My name's Corey Whaley. My author name is John Corey Whaley, but you can call me Corey. We're friends. So I want to talk about a lot of things today, but I've only got about 15 minutes to do it. So I'm going to condense it down to very important things. And those are loving reading and what that means. So I'm going to just pretend like I'm a stand-up comic and just paste the, I'm sort of not a nervous speaker, but I need to move, so this works for me. Commerce loves reading, so I thought about the name of the festival, and I thought about what can I talk about that really, addresses the theme of loving reading. Why do we love to read? Why do you love to read? It's a great pastime. You're right. It's a great escape, right? It's an escape from a day that sucks, from a day that's horrible, a day that everyone treats you horribly. You open up a book and you get to live someone else's life, right? So that's what I want to talk a little bit about, is how reading fiction, not just because I write fiction and want to sell books, reading fiction is actually, but I do. Reading fiction is, research shows, one of the best ways to teach people how to be better people. It teaches empathy. Fiction teaches empathy because it gives us the ability to step into someone else's shoes, and we stay there a while. It's, we can get that from a movie, but we're done in an hour and a half, right? We're done in 2 hours. A book, you live with it. You take it with you. It's on the subway. It's on the bus. It's in the car on the way to school. You live with it, and it becomes sort of part of your life for that little span of time, and you become part of the lives of those characters in that book. So in talking about fiction and how it teaches empathy, I think it's a very appropriate time to talk about who in control of all of us might need a little more empathy. And that would be our government, right? So we're in a council chambers. I'm a gay writer. We're getting this, you know what I'm saying? We're going to talk about Donald Trump. So look, I'm only going to let his words stand for themselves, unless I can't control myself, which, whatever. First, I want to read a quote from our former president, Barack Obama, on reading fiction and what it meant to him when he was in office. Fiction was useful as a reminder of the truths under the surface of what we argue about every day. He said, at a time when events move so quickly and so much information is transmitted, reading gave him the ability to occasionally slow down and get perspective. It gave him the ability to get in someone else's shoes, like I said. These two things, he added, have been invaluable to him. Whether they've made him a better president, he couldn't say, and this is a quote, but what I can say is that it has allowed me to sort of maintain my balance during the course of 8 years, because this is a place that comes at you hard and fast and doesn't let up. Fiction helps us take a very crude, sometimes chaotic and scary world and zoom in on one particular or many particular lives, and it makes the world less chaotic for us. It makes the world make a little more sense. It's why I write fiction. I write it to understand myself. I wrote my first book to understand growing up in a small town as a kid who didn't fit in. I wrote a book about it. It also has a thought-to-be-extinct woodpecker. Don't ask me how that happened, because I don't know anything about those. But I can tell you that fiction for me wasn't just an escape from the place I didn't like, it was an escape from the person who I thought I was supposed to be. And that's important. That's important when you're young. It's important to know that you're not the only person with your thoughts, that you're not the only person who feels a certain way. And for a lot of people, fiction is the first time they are introduced to that shared experience, to that thought. The first time I ever connected to a gay character was Perks of Being a Wallflower, the character Patrick. I can remember Charlie, the straight protagonist, becoming his friend and accepting it and not caring if he was gay. And you know why that's important? Because I was a closeted gay kid, and I didn't know if a straight guy would ever be my friend. I just thought they all wanted to beat me up, which they probably, a lot of them still do, where I'm from, Louisiana, but people change, people can change. I've seen many people change. And also, I've never been punched in the face. You heard her say it. So I survived. On the opposite end of the spectrum, our current president said this about reading. He said he has no time to read. Quote, I never have. I'm always busy doing a lot. Now I'm more busy, I guess, than ever before. Close quote. He also said in a series of interviews that he does not need to read extensively because he reaches the right decisions, quote, with very little knowledge other than the knowledge I already had, plus the words common sense, because I have a lot of common sense and I have a lot of business ability. Well, that's stupid. So never mind that. Never mind that. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to my note cards because I went way off here. Okay. It happens. I also don't outline my books. Can you tell? So recently, it was just a couple of days ago, the president was, take a minute when I say that. The president was, I'm so sorry. I will pass out note cards later. You can complain if you don't like it. And it's for real. And I hope that you do. I'm trying to be fair. The president said he was reading a book. I'm sorry. He said he was looking at a book. Looking. How many of you like to look at books but not read them? I should see very small, tiny hands. Okay, great. So Tucker Carlson the other day said, what do you do at the end of the day? What do you read? What do you watch? The president said, well, you know, I love to read. That's called a lie. Actually, I'm looking at a book. I'm reading a book. I'm trying to get started. Every time I do, look how I printed it big like he was reading it. It was just an accident, but I thought this is appropriate. Every time I do about a half a page, not read, just he does a page. I did about a half page. Every time I do about a half a page, I get a phone call that there's some emergency, this or that. Obama wiretapping him, probably. And but we're going to see the home of Andrew Jackson today in Tennessee, and I'm reading a book on Andrew Jackson. I love to read. I don't get to read very much, Tucker, because I'm working very hard on lots of different things, including getting costs down. Okay, I'm done with that. So basically, the president is reading about Andrew Jackson. How many of you know that Andrew Jackson was a genocidal maniac? How many of you now know? So one way that a president trying to work for all of us should tap into empathy is not learning about a horrible genocidal president of the past. Instead, he should be reading fiction, which is why, with my volunteers, I want to pass out, where's my note cards? Did you pass them out? Fantastic. With these note cards, you can do one or two things. One, a list of books that you think could teach our president a little more empathy. Two, a complaint to me that I was very offensive to you today. I'll read it. I'll throw it down the trash, but I'll read it. I'm kidding. I will read it, and I don't want to alienate, because I know that the way to be a stronger community is to have conversations about these things. So now I want to take a little of the jokingness aside, and I want to actually talk about the personal reason why I have to talk about these things. Why I can't just be an author who makes stuff up alone in my apartment and then come and talk to teenagers and kids and pretend like everything's okay. It's not okay. I just spent a week reading about the arts being stripped from our country. I just spent a week reading about Meals on Wheels being taken from old senior citizens. It's a scary reality that we've woken up in, and artists have always had the responsibility, whether they like it or not, of helping us understand our realities, helping us understand how to live in whatever world we find ourselves living in. And as someone who grew up in a very small, very close-minded place in a very small town in Louisiana, right on the Arkansas state line, I know the dehumanization of being marginalized from a very young age. And look, I have the benefit of being a white guy who maybe doesn't sound as flamboyant as you thought he would, you know. And so I was protected a lot as a kid. I was protected by the privilege of being white in a town that was pretty racially charged. I went home at Christmas and I saw Confederate flags all over people's yards. I saw Christian flags, which I don't have a problem with Christianity. I like all faiths, but I like all faiths, so I don't think a town should be draped in one faith saying all other faiths are not welcome, because even though they say that's not what they're doing, that's what they're doing. And so coming to terms with growing up in a place like this, I had to find a way mentally, internally, to find the outside world that I couldn't get to geographically. I couldn't get to a community that would let me say, oh, that guy's handsome, without saying, what's wrong with you? You queer? And then threatening to beat me up. But in books I could. On TV I could. In fiction, I could get a little hint of what it would be like to be myself unapologetically. And that's something that takes a really long time to learn if an entire society is structured around telling you you're less of a human being. And it's not just gay people, it's not just trans people, it's not just people who may not fit the straight stereotype. It is everyone in a marginalized group. It's immigrants now, it's the Muslim community. It's the Jewish community, which has seen such a sharp rise in bomb threats and attacks and harassment since Election Day. These things matter. It matters that we defend each other. It matters that we step up and rise up and say the uncomfortable things that will force us to have a conversation about these things, about race, about sexuality, about, I don't know, not letting old people starve to death. We have to talk about these things because they're happening right in front of our faces. And I'm telling you, as few teenagers as there are, in front of me, there's lots of younger kids, and thank you. And there are lots of teens. It's really like our generation's kind of blown it. I mean, we're working on it. But you guys have really got to work on it. You're going to take the baton, and you're going to have to. What I've seen from the teenagers of today is the acceptance and the love happen so much more easily than it does in the teenagers I grew up with. It's so easy, and it's so accepting, and I've never felt, for years I'm sorry, I'm Southern, so I sweat. I'm preaching up here, but I can remember when I put my first book out, I was really concerned about coming out, about being honest with my readers. I only came out a couple years before my first book came out. I waited till I was 26, so #Louisiana. That's part of the reason fiction was so important to me, and writing too. But after I came out, it got easier to be myself after 1 year, and then it got a lot easier, and then I published a book. And then I met all these artists who are just being paid by the liberals, by the way, to show up at these protests. That's not true. Artists aren't getting paid for anything, I promise. Like, please let a political party bribe us to show up somewhere. We'll do it. Please. But I found a community that accepted me for who I was, and that also taught me that people who don't accept me for who I am, that's not a difference of opinion, that's being wrong. And those are two different things. An opinion and being wrong are two different things. It's wrong to tell a kid he can't use a bathroom where he's afraid he won't get the shit kicked out of him. That's wrong. Excuse my language. It's wrong. It's not an opinion. It's wrong. It's sort of like an alternative fact. That's not a fact, that's a lie. It's just a lie. So, anyway. Oh boy. So with those cards, if you can find a pen or pencil, you have these cards, right? You have an index card? Okay, I do, by the end of the day, get me these. I will mail them to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Myself and our president will hopefully read them. I'll reprint them this big. So, let's see. Oh my gosh, thank you. Oh, you're so nice. Oh, thank you. I have a bad back. You're amazing. Okay, so I'm talking about, okay, great. Okay, it's just like the notes are like gay, Southern closet, coming out. Okay, like, what are these notes? Trump, Obama, gay, fiction. Okay, sorry. So, joking aside, fiction helped me not feel as alone in the world. Patrick from Perks of Being a Wallflower made me feel not as alone in the world. And it wasn't just that. It wasn't that I can only identify to characters who have a shared experience with me. A lot of it, most of it, is connecting to characters who you don't know very much about, characters whose lives you don't realize the struggles that are in them. And that's why it's important for every single person, especially the people who are making our laws, the people who are structuring our society, who are supposed to be working not against us, not on behalf of us, for us. For us. They work for us, which is why I get to complain all I want. And the idea that the arts would be disregarded as something only for a small group of people. I read this thing yesterday that was like, maybe the administration doesn't care about funding the arts because the arts are just a bunch of liberal people who are against the administration. Well, defund us, and what's that gonna do? Like, it's an interesting time, but what I like about this time, what I like about it, someone came up to me in Texas a couple weeks ago, and I hope it's okay, I won't tell her name or anything, but she told me that she thought her daughter might be gay. They had a talk about it. And she wanted to tell me because she knows me, and she said, she started to cry. And she said, I'm so scared. I'm just scared for her. I'm scared of the world. I'm scared of what will happen. And I said, well, first of all, I've never felt more loved and supported than right now. By teenagers, by fellow authors and artists, and also just by a community. The Women's March, 750,000 people in downtown LA, that felt amazing. And that means that people are out there working to make sure your lives are gonna be better, despite all the horrible, crazy things you hear every single day from the news. And I know as an artist, and it is not always easy to be an artist, that's what I wanna do most. It's not make money. I like money, but it's not making money. It's not the attention, it's I get to have a microphone, so I need to just say how I feel. And I thank you for listening. Please write me a list of books. I'm sorry, please write President Trump a list of books. If you have any questions or concerns, write it on the index card, get it to me. I promise I'll respond as kindly as I can. I will respond very kindly. I thank you all for listening. Fiction makes the world a less lonely place. And there's something magic about that. The last thing I want to say is, since I'm an author and I have a little insight into it, and I think the other authors here can agree, that magic that you feel when you're reading a book and you connect to a character and you feel as if someone is speaking somehow to very particular parts of your mind and your personality, that little hint of magic that you feel, we feel that too when we're writing it. And it might not always be in the same moment. It might not always be on the same page, but there is something a little magical about the creation of art and the consumption of art. The creation of fiction and how a stranger across the world can connect to it and feel like someone has met them, known them, and written a story about them. And anyone who's ever fallen in love with a book, you know that feeling. And you know how amazing that feeling can feel. If more people felt that, if more people were able to feel as if they were personally connected to a stranger, we would all be better off. And that's my speech.